Introduction. For over 1,000 years, everyone in the ancient world knew that if you wanted to know the truth, you had to go to a cave in Greece. This wasn't just any cave. It was the home of the oracle at Delphi. Kings, generals, and explorers traveled for months just to hear a few words from a woman sitting on a tall stool. She breathed in the strange vapors from the earth and spoke for the gods. In those days, people understood something we have forgotten: the voice of a woman, especially a woman who was connected to the deep, dark, and mysterious parts of the world, was the most powerful thing on earth. But then everything changed. In the year 390, a Roman emperor named Theodosius I decided that this kind of power was dangerous. He wanted order. He wanted rules that were easy to follow, and people who were easy to control. He ordered the temples to be closed. He tried to snuff out the mysterious, dark wisdom of the feminine and replace it with a cold, rigid system. He told the world that the dark parts of a woman, her intuition, her wildness, and her refusal to be quiet, were bad. The oracle didn't just disappear, though. She went underground. She went inside. And for nearly 2,000 years, that power has been sleeping. It has been waiting for women to stop trying to be good long enough to remember how to be powerful. You probably know exactly what it feels like when that power is suppressed. You feel it every time you say yes, when your whole body is screaming no. You feel it when you work harder than everyone else in the room, but you still feel invisible. You feel it when you look in the mirror and realize you've spent so much time making sure everyone else is happy that you have no idea what you actually want anymore. Society has a name for the woman they want you to be. They call her the good girl. The good girl is polite. She is helpful. She doesn't make a scene. She waits her turn, and she smiles even when she's exhausted. She has been told that if she is just nice enough and quiet enough, eventually the world will reward her. She thinks that if she is a puddle that people can walk over, she will eventually be loved for it. But the reward never comes, does it? Instead, you just get more work. You get partners who take you for granted. You get a life that feels like it's being lived in black and white, while everyone else is living in color. You are tired of being the reliable one who never gets a thank you. You are tired of feeling like you have to shrink yourself down just to fit into the rooms you enter. This book is not about how to be nicer. It is not about how to lean in, or how to follow a checklist to make people like you more. In fact, this book is about something much more exciting. It is about how to stop caring if people like you and start making sure they respect you. We are going to wake up your dark feminine. When people hear the word dark, they often think of something evil or bad. But in nature, dark is simply the place where things grow. Seeds grow in the dark soil. Life begins in the dark of the womb. The dark feminine isn't about being a villain. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you were told to hide. It is about your rage, your ambition, your hunger, and your sensual power. By the time you finish these pages, you will have undergone a total transformation. You won't be the woman who waits for permission anymore. You will become what we call a sovereign woman. A woman who is sovereign is a woman who owns herself. She doesn't look for outside approval because she has already approved of herself. She has a magnetic presence that commands a room without her having to say a single word. She knows how to set boundaries that are so firm, people don't even try to push them. This transformation is based on real history, psychology, and the lived experiences of women who refuse to stay small. We are going to look at the obsidian mirror, a way to see the parts of yourself you've been running from, and turn them into your greatest strengths. We are going to learn the unspoken no, which is the ability to say enough with just your energy. To understand how this works in the real world, we need to look at someone who is right where you are. The woman in the gray cubicle. Maya Sterling is 32 years old, and she is very, very tired. She works as a senior account manager at a big marketing firm in Seattle. If you looked at her desk, you would see it is perfectly organized. She has sticky notes for every task. She is the person everyone goes to when they need a favor. She is the reliable one. Maya's life looks fine on the outside, but inside she feels like she is disappearing. One Tuesday afternoon, Maya was standing in her office break room. The air smelled like burnt coffee and old popcorn. She was waiting for the microwave to finish heating up a bowl of soup she didn't even really want. She had been at her desk since 7 in the morning. A junior colleague named Mark walked in. Mark had been at the company for 6 months. He was loud, he took credit for other people's ideas, and he spent most of his day talking about his weekend plans. "Hey Maya," Mark said, leaning against the counter. "I'm heading out to happy hour with the guys from sales. I've got that report due tomorrow morning, but I haven't really had a chance to polish it. Since you're so good at the data stuff, do you think you could just give it a quick look over before you leave tonight?" Maya felt a sharp knot of resentment tighten in her stomach. She already had 3 reports of her own to finish. She hadn't seen her friends in weeks. She wanted to say, "No, Mark. Do your own work." But the good girl script was running in her head. She didn't want to be difficult. She didn't want Mark to think she wasn't a team player. So she forced a smile. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind of smile that makes your face ache. "Sure, Mark," she said. "Just leave it on my desk." "You're a lifesaver." Mark cheered, already halfway out the door. He didn't even look back. As the microwave beeped, Maya caught her reflection in the stainless steel door. For a second, she didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. Her eyes looked dull. Her shoulders were hunched. She looked like someone who had given everything away and had nothing left for herself. That night, as Maya sat in her sterile gray cubicle under the flickering fluorescent lights, she realized something. She was doing the most work, but Mark was the one getting the promotions. She was the one being nice, but she was the one who felt lonely. Being the reliable one had turned her into a ghost. Maya is at the beginning of her journey. She represents every woman who has ever felt like she is a passenger in her own life. Over the next several chapters, we are going to follow Maya as she stops being a puddle and starts being a storm. We will watch her go from the woman who apologizes for taking up space to the woman who owns the entire building. The path ahead. The journey to reclaiming your power isn't a straight line. It is a descent into the deep parts of your soul, followed by a rise into a new kind of light. Here is a look at the road we are going to travel together. The roots of the shadow. We will explore why the world is so afraid of a powerful woman, and why we were taught to fear our own darkness. We will meet figures like Lilith, who chose the wilderness over submission, and learn why her story is the key to your freedom. Shadow work. You will learn how to use the obsidian mirror to find the traits you've suppressed, like your anger and your ambition, and turn them into fuel. The power of persona. We will study the art of reinvention. You will see how women like Mata Hari and Hedy Lamarr use their mask to protect their inner selves and navigate a world that tried to put them in a box. The pillars of sovereignty. We will break down the specific traits of the dark feminine, such as detachment, discernment, and mystery. You will learn why not being fully known is one of the most magnetic things you can do. Harnessing the fury. You will learn that your rage is not a problem to be solved. It is a clarifying force that tells you exactly where your boundaries have been crossed. Magnetic presence. We will move into the practical world. How do you stand? How do you speak? How do you look at someone so that they know exactly who is in charge? Financial and intellectual sovereignty. We will look at how to reclaim your purse and your mind, breaking the poverty mindset that keeps women small. Integration. Finally, we will learn how to bring the light and the dark together. You will become a whole woman, someone who can be nurturing and kind when she chooses, but who can also be cold and sharp when she needs to be. This book is your invitation to the underground temple that Theodosius tried to close. The vapors are still rising. The truth is still waiting to be spoken. You don't need to ask for permission to be powerful. You don't need to wait for someone to give you a seat at the table. You are the table. You have spent your whole life trying to be the woman the world wanted you to be. It hasn't worked. It has only left you tired and empty. So let's try something different. Let's see what happens when you become the woman you were meant to be. The good girl is going to have to stay behind. She was never going to get you where you wanted to go anyway. It's time to meet the stranger who has been living inside you all along. The door is open. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Who is the woman you've been hiding? Imagine a dinner party in a wealthy neighborhood. The table is set with heavy silver and white flowers. At the head of the table sits a woman who looks like a queen. Her hair is perfect. Her smile is bright. She listens to her husband tell the same boring story he has told for 10 years, and she laughs at the exact right moment. To anyone looking through the window, she is the picture of a happy, successful life. She has followed every rule. She is the good girl who grew up into the perfect woman. But if you look closer, you might see the truth. Her knuckles are white because she is gripping her napkin so hard. There is a tiny flicker of heat in her eyes that looks less like joy and more like a fire that wants to burn the house down. She is a woman who has spent her whole life making herself small so that everyone else can feel big. She has traded her soul for a seat at a table where she isn't allowed to speak her mind. She is safe, but she is also dying of boredom and resentment. This is the cost of the good girl script. It is a set of rules that tells women that being quiet is the same as being good. It tells them that their value comes from how much they can help others, not from who they actually are. It promises that if you follow the rules, you will be happy. But for millions of women, that promise has turned out to be a lie. The first rebel in the garden. To understand where this dark feminine power comes from, we have to go back to the very beginning. Long before there were corporate offices or social media, there was a story about the first woman. Most people think of Eve, but ancient legends tell a different story. They tell us about a woman named Lilith. In the old stories, Lilith was not made from Adam's rib. She was made from the same red earth he was. When they were created, they stood side by side. They were made of the same ingredients. They were equal. But the moment they started to live together, things changed. Adam didn't want a partner, he wanted a follower. He demanded that Lilith obey him. He wanted her to be underneath him, both in their lives and in their most private moments. Lilith looked at him and didn't see a leader. She saw someone who was trying to steal her power. She told him that since they came from the same dirt, she would not be his servant. She refused to lie beneath him. She insisted on her own space, her own voice, and her own dignity. When it became clear that Adam would never see her as an equal, Lilith didn't cry or beg for him to change. She didn't try to fix the relationship by being nicer. Instead, she did something that changed the world. She spoke a secret, powerful name, a word that held the magic of the universe, and she grew wings. She flew away from the Garden of Eden. She chose to leave paradise. She chose to go to the Red Sea, a place of salt and wind and wild things. She chose a hard life in the wilderness over a perfect life where she had to be a slave. The stories say she became a demon because she chose her own path. But if you look through a different lens, you see a woman who was the very first to say no to a life that didn't fit her soul. She became the mother of the dark feminine. She represents the part of every woman that would rather be wild and free than good and trapped. The myth of the good girl's reward. We are taught from a very young age that if we are helpful, quiet, and pretty, the world will give us what we want. We believe that if we work the hardest and complain the least, our boss will give us a raise. We think that if we are the perfect partner, we will be loved forever. This is a myth. It is a story we are told to keep us from making trouble. Think about the Stepford Wives. This was a famous story and movie from the 1970s. In the story, a woman moves to a beautiful town where all the wives are perfect. They love to clean. They never get angry. They always look beautiful while they scrub the floors. But the secret is that they aren't real women anymore. They have been turned into robots. The men in the town wanted wives who didn't have dark emotions like anger or ambition. They wanted women who were only light. The problem is that a person who is only light isn't a whole person. When you try to be only good, you have to cut off half of yourself. You have to hide your anger, even when people treat you badly. You have to hide your ambition so you don't look bossy. You have to hide your own desires so you don't look selfish. When you hide these parts of yourself, they don't go away. They go into the shadow. This is a place deep inside your mind where you put everything you are ashamed of. But the shadow is also where your power lives. Your anger is the part of you that knows when you are being treated unfairly. Your ambition is the part of you that knows you are capable of great things. When you lock those parts away to be a good girl, you aren't just being nice, you are making yourself weak. History shows us that the good girl rarely gets the reward she was promised. Instead, she gets more work. She gets taken for granted. She becomes the person everyone vents to, but no one listens to. The reward for being a good girl is usually just more good girl chores. The split within, the Madonna and the whore. About 100 years ago, a man named Sigmund Freud noticed a strange pattern in how men looked at women. He called it the Madonna-whore complex. He saw that women were often put into two boxes. On one side was the Madonna. This is the mother, the saint, the woman who is pure and selfless. She is loved and respected, but she isn't allowed to have any sexual power or personal fire. She is a statue on a pedestal. On the other side was the whore. This is the woman who is sexual, loud, and dangerous. She is wanted, but she is not respected. She is treated like a toy or a threat. This split has forced women to live in a state of war with themselves. Most women try to stay in the Madonna box because it feels safer. They want to be seen as good mothers, good daughters, and good workers. But they feel a hole inside. They feel a pull toward the darker side of life, the side that wants to be seen, wanted, and powerful. The dark feminine awakening is about breaking both of those boxes. It is about realizing that you can be a devoted mother and a powerful leader. You can be a kind friend and a woman who knows how to use her sexuality as a weapon of influence. You don't have to choose between being respected and being magnetic. When you integrate your shadow, the parts of you that you've been told are bad, you become a whole woman. You stop being a character in someone else's play and start being the author of your own life. A storm in a small apartment. In a small gray apartment in Seattle, Maya Sterling sat on her floor. Outside, the rain was tapping against the glass, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Maya was 32 years old, and by all accounts, she was doing everything right. She was a senior account manager at a big firm. She never missed a deadline. She always brought cookies to the office on birthdays. She called her mother every Sunday. But that night, Maya was surrounded by boxes of old things she had moved from her childhood home. She reached into a dusty box and pulled out a notebook with a bright purple cover. It was her journal from when she was 19. She opened the pages and began to read. She didn't recognize the girl who had written those words. 19-year-old Maya didn't want to be an account manager. She wanted to travel to places that weren't on maps. She wanted to start a business that changed how people thought. She wrote about wanting to be a storm, not a puddle. She wrote about wanting to be a woman who walked into a room and made the air feel heavy with her presence. Maya looked around her sterile living room. Everything was beige. Everything was safe. She had become a puddle. She had spent 10 years saying yes to things she hated so that people would like her. She realized that the hidden woman in that journal hadn't died. She had just been buried under a mountain of expectations. As she read her old words, Maya felt a cold, sharp feeling in her chest. It wasn't sadness. It was the feeling of a blade being sharpened. It was the first time she acknowledged that she was angry. She was angry at her boss for taking credit for her ideas. She was angry at her mother for always telling her to be more flexible. And most of all, she was angry at herself for letting her fire go out. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. For the first time in years, she didn't look at her hair or her skin. She looked at her eyes. She saw a stranger looking back, a woman who was tired of being helpful. That night, Maya didn't go to bed early to be ready for work. She stayed up and kept reading. She was meeting the woman she had been hiding for over a decade. Why the world fears your depth. The world is very comfortable with a woman who is predictable. A woman who stays in her lane and follows the rules is easy to manage. But a woman who has embraced her dark feminine side is not easy to manage. She is sovereign. Sovereign means that she is her own ruler. She doesn't ask for permission to feel what she feels. She doesn't apologize for her success. Society often calls these women difficult, cold, or intimidating. These are just words used to try and push women back into the good girl box. When a man is firm and focused, he is called a leader. When a woman is firm and focused, she is called aggressive. This is a tactic designed to make you feel ashamed of your own strength. The dark feminine is the energy of the deep ocean. The surface of the ocean can be bright and sunny, but the real power is in the depths where it is dark and cold. That is where the pressure is. That is where the giant creatures live. Most people stay on the surface because the depths are scary. They are afraid of what they might find if they look too deep into themselves. But the good girl life is a life lived only on the surface. It is thin and easily broken. When you start to embrace your depth, you become harder to break. You become anti-fragile. This means that you don't just survive challenges, you get stronger because of them. You stop fearing the dark parts of life, conflict, loss, and desire, and you start seeing them as tools for growth. The power of the no. One of the most important parts of this awakening is learning that your no is just as holy as your yes. A good girl is a yes machine. She says yes to extra work. She says yes to dates she doesn't want to go on. She says yes to being interrupted. She believes that saying yes makes her valuable. In reality, a yes has no value if you aren't allowed to say no. If you are forced to say yes, you aren't a person with agency, you are a tool. The dark feminine understands the power of the no. This is the unspoken number. It is an energy you carry that tells people you cannot be pushed around. You don't have to yell or be rude. You just have to be so grounded in your own worth that people instinctively know not to cross your boundaries. Think of a lioness. She doesn't spend her day growling at everyone to prove she is dangerous. She is often very quiet. She sleeps in the sun. But there is a weight to her presence. You know, without her saying a word, that there is a line you do not cross. That is the energy of a woman who has integrated her shadow. She is peaceful, but she is not harmless. Reclaiming your ambition. We are often told that ambition in a woman is a sign of greed or a lack of feminine softness. We are told we should be content with what we have. But the dark feminine is the energy of creation and destruction. It is the part of nature that wants to grow, to expand, and to take up space. When you look at history, the women who changed things were never the ones who stayed in their lane. They were the ones who were too much. They were the ones who wanted more than they were supposed to want. They were like the female pirates who ruled the seas. They were like the queens who led armies. They were like the scientists who worked in secret because they weren't allowed in the labs. These women didn't wait for someone to tell them they were powerful. They felt the hunger inside them, and they followed it. Your ambition is not a flaw. It is a compass. It is telling you exactly where your soul wants to go. To hide your ambition is to tell the universe that you don't believe you are worthy of your own potential. Breaking the mirror of approval. For most of your life, you have probably been looking into a mirror of approval. This is a mirror held up by your parents, your boss, your partner, and society. You look into it to see if you are doing a good job. You look to see if they are happy with you. If they smile, you feel good. If they frown, you feel like you are failing. This is a trap. It means your happiness is in someone else's hands. If they decide to stop liking you, your whole world falls apart. The dark feminine uses a different tool. It is the obsidian mirror. Obsidian is a dark volcanic glass. When you look into an obsidian mirror, you don't see the bright, fake reflection of who you are supposed to be. You see the deep truth of who you are. You see your scars, your hunger, and your power. When you stop looking for approval in the eyes of others, you become magnetic. People are drawn to someone who doesn't need them. There is nothing more attractive or powerful than a woman who is completely comfortable in her own skin, even the dark parts. She doesn't ask, "Do you like me?" She asks, "Do I like you?" This shift in perspective changes everything. It moves you from being the object of the world's attention to being the observer of the world. The choice to be whole. This journey is not about becoming a bad person. It is not about hurting others or being mean. It is about becoming a whole person. It is about bringing the woman you've been hiding out into the light. It is about realizing that you are allowed to be a storm. You are allowed to be a mystery. You are allowed to be a powerhouse. Lilith left the garden because she knew she was worth more than a life of submission. Maya Sterling started to read her old journals because she knew the puddle life was killing her soul. They both made a choice to face the unknown rather than stay in a safe prison. You have that same choice. You can keep playing the good girl and hope that one day someone will notice and reward you. Or you can reclaim your own power right now. You can stop apologizing for your existence. You can start listening to that quiet, fierce voice inside you that says, "I want more." The woman you've been hiding is not a monster. She's your greatest ally. She's the one who will stand up for you when no one else will. She's the one who will give you the courage to ask for that raise, to leave that bad relationship, or to finally start that project you've been dreaming about. She is your dark feminine self, and she has been waiting for you to invite her home. Your first step into the dark. Transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, brave moments. You don't have to fly to the Red Sea or quit your job today. You just have to start acknowledging the truth. Today, your task is to find one dangerous thought you've been hiding and write it down. Maybe it's an ambition you're not supposed to have. Maybe it's a boundary you've been too afraid to set. Maybe it's a secret desire for a different kind of life. Write it on a piece of paper. Look at it. Don't judge it. Don't try to explain it away. Just let it exist. This is the first crack in the good girl mask. By writing it down, you are telling your shadow that you are ready to listen. You are telling the woman you've been hiding that it is finally safe to come out. Do this today. Find a private place and write down 3 things you would do if you weren't afraid of what people thought of you. Keep this paper in a secret place. This is your first piece of obsidian, the beginning of your new sovereign self. Chapter 2: Shadow Work, Meeting Your Internal Stranger. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung sat in his quiet study in Switzerland. It was 1913. Outside, the world was on the edge of a great war. Inside, Jung was on the edge of a great storm of his own. He was one of the most famous doctors in the world. He had a big house, a wife, and children. He was the hand-picked student of Sigmund Freud, the man who started modern psychology. By all accounts, Jung had made it. He was a success. He was a good man. But he felt like he was falling apart. He started having visions that scared him. He saw a giant flood covering Europe. He heard voices. He saw strange figures in his dreams. Most people would have said he was losing his mind. In fact, many of his friends did say that. They walked away from him. They thought he had gone too far into the deep end. Jung did something most people are too afraid to do. He didn't try to hide the voices. He didn't try to run back to his perfect life. He decided to walk right into the middle of the storm. He decided to meet the stranger living inside of him. He bought a large red leather-bound book with thick